Demon-Kissed, Chapter 10. Bite me, old man. I will have you know that the only reason that crazy female I call friend is still alive right now is because I told her she needed your help, and I only knew that because of a vision, Isaac said lazily, and continued around a yawn. Besides, wasn't rest your excuse to escape her room earlier? What was up with that anyway? Why are you in here, boy? I know you wouldn't be in my room just to pester me. Now out with it, I said, and ignored his probing questions. Fine. Be that way, you old grump. She needs to stay here, and I don't mean just until she's healed either, he said, and stretched, closing his eyes. Erin can stay as long as she likes. I cannot keep her here if she does not wish to stay, I said. No, Al. If she leaves here, Sarah will kill her, and there won't be a damn thing we can do about it. Not one damn thing, he said, sitting up straight, and his voice was a low, growling hiss of sound. I held his glowing, red-yellow gaze and saw the fear and pain there. Please, Al, she's like a big sister to me. She's my best friend, and I don't want to lose her to a jealous, brain-dead, crazy female vampire. And, Alistair, if you can't keep her here, in this house, I will lose her. You will lose her. I have seen it. His voice had taken on a broken quality as he continued, hitching as he said the last, and his fingers clenched on the arms of the chair, making the leather-covered wood creak. Can I lose something I never had to begin with? But whatever the boy saw has greatly disturbed him beyond what normal visions usually do, I thought. And how do you propose I keep Erin Malone in my home when we both know that as soon as she learns where she is, she will do everything in her power to leave? I asked. Kiss her, he said simply, and stood to leave. Dumbfounded, I just stared at him for a second. I beg your pardon? I asked, sure he had to be jesting. Kiss her, Alistair. Just kiss her and she'll stay with you, he said quietly. The last time I tried to kiss the little viper, she threw me into a brick wall. Twice, I muttered, and he left the room in a cloud of black scentless smoke, laughing his head off as he went. Growling low in my throat in frustration, I stood and strode to the bathroom. Closing the door behind me, I stripped off my clothes and turned the shower on. There had to be a way of convincing Erin to stay that didn't involve kissing her. No matter how badly that idea tempted me, and the very thought of kissing her tempted me nearly beyond my ability to reason. There just had to be a way. I just had to find it, that was all, I thought. Finding a solution to this problem may prove to be much like the woman herself, and be a bit more than I can handle at the moment, I mused aloud, stepping into the shower and pulling the curtain closed. Perhaps the dawn will bring me some answers, as I am becoming too tired to think, I thought, as I stepped out of the shower 10 minutes later, and wrapping a towel around my waist, I returned to my bedroom to lay down on the bed. Closing my eyes, I drifted off to sleep and hoped for the best. Musings from the diary of Alistair Leroux. Sometimes hope is all we have to hold on to, and when, at last, it slips through our fingers, we are left with nothing but lost dreams and broken hearts. 2 days later, May 18th, 2035. Today was going to be so far from fun it would border on disaster. I can just feel it. I thought at noon the next day, and sighed heavily as I finished the thought. Feel it, hells, I can hear it coming down the stairs and heading for my office. That woman is batshit, boss. Major batshit, Lucien Virot said from the open office doorway. "What has she done now, Luke?" I asked, signing the border agreement I had been reviewing, and put it in the outbox, pulling another contract from the inbox. "She just threw a bowl of chili at me, and insists that her Glock truly is necessary to her survival in this, quote, madhouse of undead duplicity, end quote," he said, his deep French-tinged voice thick with sarcasm and irritation. I looked up at him and sighed at his dark expression. "I have no idea what to do with her at the moment, old friend. The only reason that I brought her here was to save her life. As for her being batshit, as you put it, she is not. She is terrified and hiding it under a massive load of aggression," I replied, and signed the contract, then penned a note stating the terms I knew every master that had a territory in outer city Chicago would agree to. Stapling that to the contract, I placed it in the outbox and pulled yet another from my inbox. She must also be confused about her abrupt removal from her camp, and I have the feeling she will ask after everyone else and then inquire about myself last, I thought, and looked up at Lucian. 700 years older than myself, and the last of the notorious vampire house of de Grace, Lucian had been with the guild since 1387 BC. He had also been Delia's #1 snoop and late worker due to spending most of his time in bat form. I had never truly understood her reasoning for taking him in when she had taken a contract to kill him, and had never truly questioned it. To be honest, I had never really thought about it. However, I had been questioning many of the decisions she had made before she was killed in battle, and I had come to the conclusion that Delia had no idea what she had been doing in charge of so many people. But on his position as third lieutenant in ranking among the vampires in the guild, I never questioned that, and I had always thought that she had chosen well. It was my position that I had been questioning every day since the day she died, and even after all these centuries I still did not truly know how she had really felt about me. "I feel obliged to remind you, Lucian, that Erin fainted from blood loss 6 days ago. The first 2 days she was here, you may recall, Merrick fought an uphill battle to save her, and finally won the battle on the third, thanks in part to Nova. On the 4th day she was here, she woke up for a while and asked questions, then fell asleep a few hours later. Erin has slept for 2 days straight, and then woke up this morning to find that she was deep in Indian territory, unarmed. For the love of the gods, man, I can't blame her for the way she's reacting, can you?" I said, and returned my gaze to my paperwork. "You know I can't either, Alistair, but damn it, you need to find a way to keep her from killing us all when we poke our heads in the room to see if she needs anything," he said. "Has she shot anyone yet?" I asked idly, and returned part of my attention to the contract before me. These blasted things seemed to be filled with more concessions on my part than anything else, and infinitely hard to argue with. Much like the woman currently terrorizing my staff, I mused, and crossed out an entire section of text. "Alonzo. Then again, he is brain-dead and vocally unfiltered," he said, running his hands through his hip-length blue-black hair in agitation and pulling it back into a tail at the crown of his head, then draping it over his right shoulder. "Braiding your hair to keep it safe?" I asked in amusement as he began to do just that. "You would, too, if you had just spent the last 2 hours cleaning extra hot chili out of it," he groused, securing the end of the braid with a black leather tie and then tossing it back over his shoulder. Lucian crossed his arms over his chest, bracing his legs apart, and glared at me. "Go talk to the little she-devil and calm her ass down, or I'm leaving to work with Nick. I have never been this terrified of a woman in my long life, and this is the worst job I have ever been asked to do by anyone, and that includes our evening star," he said, and shifted his weight uncomfortably, as a loud screech of rage echoed through the mansion and a crash sounded from overhead. The crash was followed by 9 gunshots, and silence descended for a few seconds. Then, "Alistair McIntyre, get your evil, God-forsaken ass up here now!" was bellowed from Erin's room. "And thus I am summoned into Her Highness's presence," I thought with amusement, feeling a small grin tug at my lips, and stifled the urge to laugh. "If you hear more shots and I do not return, consider yourself the acting master," I said, only half joking, as I rose and headed for the door. For all I knew, she had more bullets and would shoot me until I ceased to be, or until I resembled Swiss cheese, at the very least. "Not funny, Alistair, not funny at all," Lucian said, and stepped aside to let me pass. "True, but does this not remind you of something?" I said, and left the office at a slow walk. What was I supposed to tell her, I wondered? That I fucked that mission 6 ways to hell and back? That was true, in a way. That I was deeply sorry that she got so badly hurt? This, too, was true. That she was supposed to stay in my home until I caught the traitor? I snorted at that thought and shook my head. That would go over like a stone giant. I could tell her so many things, but there were far more that I couldn't, and I had no way of knowing how she would react to the things I could tell her. As I reached the top of the stairs, I smelled blood and walked a little faster. Stopping in front of the door, I raised my hand and knocked softly. The door was opened by a pissed-looking, blood-covered Alonzo. "Do you have any idea how it feels to be shot 18 times?" he demanded in Greek. "No, I do not. Erin is still in one piece, I take it?" I said in the same language, and he nodded. The walls and furniture were about as lucky as I was. "Luke's right, she's crazier than a bed bug and 9 times as mean as a shrew," he said, and stepped back to let me into the room. The room was flooded with daylight from the east-facing windows, and I briefly wondered what Erin thought of vampires who were mostly immune to sunlight as I entered the room. "Where did you get the gun, Malone?" I asked curiously, walking to the foot of the bed. "Why am I in your house?" she demanded, ignoring my question, and I repressed a sigh. "As I told you the last time you were awake, I brought you to a place where your wounds could be treated properly, and where you would be safe to recover," I said, and crossed my arms, watching her dark green-blue eyes grow darker as her gaze swept over my arms and chest before returning to my face. "Bullshit. You and I both know that I would have been fine back at camp," she snapped. "Oh, would you now? Well, I apologize for making sure you did not bleed to death from the wound in your thigh, Your Highness," I snapped sarcastically, as remembered fear washed over me at her words. Dropping my arms and leaning over to brace my hands on the footboard, I looked at her fiercely and bared my teeth in a mirthless smile. Erin scooted up higher in the bed, I assumed, to get farther away from me, and the faint scent of fear drifted from her. I felt a sharp stab of pain at the gesture and scent. Giving her a disgusted look to cover it, I straightened and stalked to the chair in the far corner of the room, where I sat and gazed at her intently for long moments, feeling my temper ignite the longer I looked at her and thought of what could have happened to her if I had done what she suggested. "What would you have had me do? Let you bleed out and then tell Isaac that there had been nothing I could do to save your life? That I was deeply sorry you had died when it had been my job to keep you breathing and in one piece?" I demanded harshly at length, and saw her flinch with every word. "Would you have preferred I turn you, perhaps? Or would you have had me leave you in your inadequately stocked and medically disinclined camp to die of infection?" I continued when she remained silent. Her face went white at my words, her throat moved as she swallowed hard and shook her head slowly. "So you did hear his side of the conversation?" she murmured, and I laughed harshly. No, your demon cornered me in my room the other night and informed me that I had done a miserable job of keeping you in one piece. Apparently I was supposed to keep you out of the fight and put you somewhere nice and safe. Had I known this, I would have knocked you out and told Mac to get his people the hells out of there, I said, and leaned back in the chair. Silence descended over the room, and Alonzo shifted his weight from one foot to the other over by the door. I guess we need to talk, Aaron said finally in a quiet tone, then gestured at Alonzo with the gun and asked, Can he leave, please? He can, I said, then added, He was only in here to keep you from killing anyone. Alistair, I don't like the idea of leaving you alone in here with her, he said, shaking his head. Are you concerned for my physical safety or hers? I asked mildly. Both, he answered promptly. I won't hurt her, and she can do nothing to me physically in her current state. Go get yourself cleaned up and get something to eat. We will be fine in your absence, I said, and waved him out of the room. Alonzo didn't look convinced, but he left the room, muttering about foolish friends and emotional injury or suicide under his breath in Greek. What was that about? She asked once he was gone. Nothing, I answered, rising from the chair and walking to the window. Right, whatever. I still want to know why you brought me here, to your house, instead of some place equally safe and closer to the battle site, she said, and I heard the gun thunk onto the bedside table. This was the closest, safest place I could get to before you bled out, I said, keeping my back to her and gazing out at the sun-washed flower garden below. The roses need trimming, I noted, and propped an arm on the wall beside the window. Okay, she said in a dubious tone, drawing the word out, and continued. Can I leave here when I've recovered, or do I have to stay here indefinitely? You are free to leave whenever you wish, after you are fully healed, of course, I said, and wondered idly when her curiosity would get the better of her. Why are Isaac and the children here? Aaron asked next, and I heard the covers shift as she moved around in the bed. I sent word to your demon that you had been injured severely and that I had brought you here for medical attention. He arrived later with the children, I said, and shrugged. And you don't mind? The kids being here, I mean, she said, and I glanced at her briefly. She was turned slightly in the bed and watching me closely with her hands in her lap. No, I do not mind them being here in my home, I said, and returned my gaze outside. How is Mac? I haven't seen him to ask him myself, she asked. Ah, inane conversation, how I have missed it, I thought sarcastically, and leaned my shoulder against the edge of the window casing. He is fine, his pack is fine, and he left at dawn to return to them, I said. Good, she said, obvious relief in her voice. Then she asked, You weren't hurt either, were you? A trace of concern coloring her tone. No. Now, if there is nothing else you require from me, I will bid you good day, as I have many things that must be tended to, and 15 other guests to inquire after, I said briskly, and moved back from the window, turned, and headed for the door without looking at her again. Alistair? She said, stopping me in the open doorway, one hand on the door to pull it shut behind me. I closed my eyes for a moment, then turned slightly to look at her. Yes, I said, and waited for her to speak. Never mind, she said after a moment, a small puzzled frown wrinkling her brow as she looked at me. Very well, then, my lady. Good day to you, I said, and left the room, closing the door softly behind me. Moving to the stairs, I headed down them and continued to my office. Passing Lucian in the hallway outside the pocket doors, I ignored his questioning look and closed the doors behind me, then locked them. I had no wish to be disturbed while I thought over my encounter with Erin a few minutes ago, and tried to find the reason behind the faint fear scent that I had detected. She hadn't shown that fear on her face or in her eyes. It had only been in her scent, and hadn't been very strong. I needed to find the reason behind it before she was healed enough to leave, and then I needed to find the words I would need to say to make her stay. To that end, I sat at my desk and retrieved my notepad from its drawer and set about writing down everything that I knew about her.